cases yesterday. With everything we've done, we still have 600 new cases yesterday, either walking in the door to hospitals or people who were in hospitals who were then diagnosed with COVID. But that number is also going down. One of the most stubborn situations and the most distressing are the number of deaths, and that is down from where we were, but it's still 232 yesterday, which is an unimaginable and painful reality that we have to deal with. And when people talk about how good things are going and the decline and the progress, that's all true. It's also true that 232 people were lost yesterday, and that's 232 families that are suffering today. Also a caution in the number of deaths. I know the reporters and everyone likes to trace these numbers and document these numbers. I think we're going to find, when all is said and done, that the numbers are much different than we actually thought they were. The amount of information that is now coming out that changes what we believed or what we were told happens almost on a daily basis. This was a virus that started in China. Now, last week the CDC says, oh, it didn't come from China. It actually came from Europe to the East Coast. That's how it got to New York, and that's how it got to Chicago, etc. That by the time we turned off travel from China, the China travel ban, the virus was already gone. And it was in Europe, and then it came here from Europe. And we didn't know at the time, so February, March, flights were landing, people coming from Italy, from the UK, etc. They were bringing the virus. We didn't know. They're now saying that the virus may not have come just in February. Reopen it. We have to reopen the society. You know, it's like asking, when do you start breathing? You have to breathe, right? The economy must function. People need incomes. The economy has to work. The state needs revenues. People have to be able to live their lives. You have to be able to get out of the house. You have to be able to see friends. You have to be able to see family. So it's not a question of do we reopen. It's a question of how we reopen. That's really the question that we have to grapple with and that we're dealing with in New York. Our position in New York is the answer to the question, how do we reopen, is by following facts and data as opposed to emotion and politics, right? Everyone has emotion. I want to go back to work today. I want to go see my family today. I want to be able to go to a bar and have a couple of drinks and socialize with my friends today. I do, by the way. But it's not about emotion. It's not about political position on reopening. There's no Democratic position, Republican position. This virus kills Democrats, Republicans. There's no politics to this. Deal with facts and deal with data. And use that to instruct you, even more important at a time of high emotion.
The phrase, take what you see on the news with a grain of salt, could not be more relevant than it is currently, especially with all these conspiracy theories going on about how this disease started and how it traveled and and all of that. This especially goes for what you just saw with New York Governor Cuomo's update. That the update on May 6th, I should be more specific with that, that this virus came to the USA through Europe, not China, and that possibly this virus could have already been in the USA as early as the first days of the outbreak in Wuhan. That means that during Christmas and New Year's, when all the churches were packed and many people seeing family and friends, there was probably that one carrier that exposed a massive amount of people to the virus. My initial reaction was, why would you reveal this information as we are still in the thick of this mess? We don't need any more conspiracy theories. But here is what's factual. Air travel, along with China withholding the vital information, is what really fanned the flames, so to speak, as to why this virus was able to wreak havoc around the globe. See, when you're in an airplane, the air that comes out of the vents is recycled air. So imagine being on a long flight, trans-Pacific flights especially, breathing dry air for 14 plus hours, on top of having 300 passengers crammed into a metal tube hurling in the air at 500 miles an hour. Then you also consider the business side of flying. Major airlines being part of alliances like Star Alliance, SkyTeam, and OneWorld, with so many code share agreements, basically allowing people to easily connect to major cities from their regional airport. With travel restrictions not being implemented in a timely manner, the domino effect happens. A person infected in China visits Japan, Singapore, the Philippines, and then connects to a flight to the Middle East, Europe, and eventually America. It doesn't help that the incubation period for this particular coronavirus strain is much longer than other viruses. Therefore, I would think the only way we can really know for sure when exactly this virus came to the US is through antibody testing. Right now, there's over 1.2 million confirmed cases here in the US alone, but as studies are showing, more people that never got tested for COVID-19 still end up carrying the antibody. So say we retroactively add those who have never been tested but have the antibody to the 1.2 million that have been confirmed. The higher the number, the longer the virus has been in the USA. So it could very well be that this virus could have already been here before 2020. But just like I took that bit of news in that news clip with Governor Cuomo with a grain of salt, please take my hypothesis also with a grain of salt. As of May 8th, 11:32 a.m., there are now 3,877,914 worldwide cases of COVID-19, with 1,259,777 coming in the U.S. alone, with 270,537 total fatalities, while 1,296,603 have recovered. So nothing really standing out except the numbers just continue to keep climbing at a pretty out of control rate, even though there are some places that are managing to keep the COVID-19 virus in check. Can't really say that for other parts of the globe. So what can you do? Just gotta sit back and wait until, hopefully these numbers improve. Anyway, back on Monday, May 4th, Jeopardy started a special 10-day event, starting off with Ken Jennings' first game of that historic 74-day run, and then a special encore presentation of the greatest of all time tournament, which pitted Jennings against Brad Rutter and James Holzhauer. Now, many of you probably will remember James Holzhauer as the guy who kept on breaking records on Jeopardy and was able to almost eclipse the same amount of money that Ken Jennings won in his initial run in just half that time. But still, very impressive, to have seen his run unfold back in season 35. And Brad Rutter was, his run started when Jeopardy used to have the 5-day limit before season 20. And therefore, a lot of the money that he's won, courtesy of tournaments that he's won in subsequent years following his initial appearance. Jeopardy, without a doubt, is my favorite show of all time, and I remember having fond memories of that show going back to as far as 1998, when I was only 3 going on 4, and this was when my grandparents used to live at the house, at this house that I'm in now, and they loved watching Jeopardy, and they would always I would always be sitting on their lap, and I'd be watching the show, even though I had no clue, you know, what the premise of the show was, except for the theme song and Alex Trebek and the sushi bar set. And it has been a ubiquitous part of my life ever since. Sorry, that was my phone going off. But anyway, Ken Jennings' run bridged the 20th and the 21st seasons of Jeopardy in 2004. And so here is Ken Jennings' first game, aired back on June 2, 2004. And then a little trip down memory lane about that special year of 2004.
Hey Jeopardy fans, Ken Jennings here, and I'm excited to tell you that over the next 2 weeks we're going to be presenting the Jeopardy Greatest of All Time tournament, in which Brad Rutter, James Holzhauer, and I went head-to-head for $1 million. I don't want to spoil anything, but I, for one, had a really good time. But before we get to that, we want to show you something very special right now. This is the first time that I was ever on Jeopardy. It was a tight game. It all came down to Final Jeopardy, as you'll see. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences on the Jeopardy stage, but none more memorable than the moment at the end of the show when I realized that I was going to be a Jeopardy champion for the rest of my life, and nobody could ever take that away from me. Let's watch.
This is Jeopardy! Here are today's contestants. A fundraiser from New York, Julia Lazarus. A software engineer from Salt Lake City, Utah, Ken Jennings. And our returning champion, a freelance educator originally from California, Missouri, Jerry Harvey, whose two-day cash winnings total $70,002. And now, here is the host of Jeopardy, Alex Trebek.
I came out quickly because I'm eager to get the game going. We have an excellent champion. Today he faces Julia and Ken, and we're delighted to have you with us. Good luck to all three of you. Here we go into the Jeopardy round. Categories. Check them out. We have biography subtitles, followed by let's clean up, pardon me, quotable recent movies, playtime, and finally some episodes, EPI in quotation marks. All right, champ, you go first.
Let's try episodes for 200, please.
A fast-spreading outbreak of a disease. Jerry.
What is an epidemic?
Correct.
Epi for 400, please.
A short section at the end of a book. Ken.
What is an epilogue?
Right.
I'll take Epi for 600.
From the Greek for seizure, it's a medical condition involving abnormal electrical brain activity. Jerry.
What is epilepsy?
Yes.
Epi for 800, please.
A witty saying or expression. Ken.
What's an epigram?
Right.
I'll take Epi for 1,000.
The best example of something. Ken.
What is the epitome?
Epitome, yes.
I'll take playtime for 200.
In Pinochle, an ace, king, queen, jack, 10 of trump is a royal sequence. In poker, it would be a royal this. Jerry.
What is a royal flush?
Correct.
Let's try biography subtitles, please. 200.
A president remembering Jack. Jerry.
Who is John Kennedy? Jack
Yes.
Kennedy. Biography for 400, please.
A Frenchman, the boy who invented books for the blind. Ken.
Who is Braille?
Louis Braille, yes.
Biography for 600.
A Revolutionary War figure, sailor, hero, father of the American Navy. Jerry.
Who is John Paul Jones?
That's it.
Subtitles for 800, please.
Answer the Daily Double. You have $800 less than Ken.
Let's make it a true daily double.
All right, you'll have a $1,000 lead if you are right. Here is the clue for you in biography subtitles. An entrepreneur, bargain billionaire.
Who is Woolworth?
Nope, you picked the wrong one. You had to come into more modern times for Sam Walton.
Okay.
Walmart. All right, you have no money. Select again.
Biography subtitles for 1,000, please.
A 60s civil rights leader by any means necessary. Julia.
Who is Malcolm X?
Correct.
Let's try quotable recent movies for 200, please.
2002. Nice Greek girls who don't find a husband work in the family restaurant. Ken.
What is My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Correct.
Quotable recent movies for 400.
2003. I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass. Ken.
What is Pirates of the Caribbean?
Right.
Movies for 600, please.
2001. Keep an eye on the staircases. They like to change. Ken,
What is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone?
you are right again.
I'll take movies for 800.
2003. God doesn't take vacations, does he? Do ye? Ken?
What is Bruce Almighty?
Yeah. Our
Movies for
champion
1,000.
Jerry knows the drill. He's in third place. He makes his first selection from these categories in the Double Jeopardy round. H names, actresses and playwrights, vocabulary, senatorial successors, country time, and finally lemonade. Jerry?
Let's try vocabulary for 400, please.
Bovine means resembling cattle. This word, that's one letter shorter, means resembling sheep. Julia,
What is ovine?
that's it.
Vocabulary for 800, please.
When in England, if asked to snog, be aware it means this. Ken,
What is to kiss?
correct.
Vocabulary for 1200.
This word for circumstances that lessen a punishment comes from the Latin for soft. Jerry,
What is extenuating?
no. Ken,
What is mitigating?
mitigating is the word.
I'll
Yes.
take vocabulary for 1600.
Answer. Daily double. You are off to a very fast start. We have almost twice as much money as Julia, and even 10,000.
Let's bet 2,000, Alex.
All right, here's the clue. Prefab metal sheets used to print newspapers gave us this term for standard wording, as in contracts.
What is boilerplate?
Boilerplate, yes.
And I'll take vocabulary for 2,000.
Here's Sophia with the clue.
The weak part of the blade is the foible. The strong part has this F name that can also mean what you're best at.
Ken,
What is a fort?
yes.
Actresses for 400, please.
He never forgave Mrs. Patrick Campbell for going off on her honeymoon while rehearsing his Pygmalion. Jerry,
Who is Shaw?
that's it.
Let's have actors and playwrights for 800, please.
As a student at Brown University, this actress appeared in a play written by her father, Romulus Linney. Julia,
Who is Laura Linney?
correct.
Actresses 1200.
Answer there, the other daily double. You do not have enough money to catch Ken, but if you made this a true daily double, you would wind up very close, assuming you responded correctly.
Let's go for 5,000.
All right, that's a good wager. Here is the clue. Chapter 1 of her life with Neil Simon began in 1973 when she was cast in his play The Good Doctor.
Who is Marcia Mason?
Correct. You became Mrs. Neil Simon and you have $11,000.
Hey,
Let's see what the
actresses
clue
for
is. She's the first female track and field athlete to win medals in 5 different events at a single Olympics. 30 seconds. Good luck. And she's still going strong. Going into final. Who is Jones? And we will accept that in terms of female athletes. There aren't that many. And you've got $17,201 more for a 37,201 total, and you become the Jeopardy champion.
Here's a fun fact for you. June 2, 2004 was 8 years to the date before my high school graduation. I graduated high school June 2nd, 2012. But anyway, 2004 was huge in so many ways. I turned 10, double digits, yeah, just over a month after Ken Jennings' first game aired, and that was the year that I also started taking piano lessons. And 16 years later, a lot has been achieved, including being an instructor myself at a music studio for my day job and managing Mark Joe Music, the other channel that branched off of GameboyTV that I dedicate now for any music that I put on there. 4th and 5th grade took place during 2004. In fact, in my hometown, the 2003-04 school year, which was my 4th grade year, was a milestone year, a historic one even. When I was in 4th grade, the township erected a new building called the Upper Elementary School, which would house the 4th and 5th graders. It was necessary for that building because we needed to free up congestion at the very crowded middle school and each of the elementary schools. And so the 2004-2005 school year would be the first year that the UES, as we called it, was in use. And I was very glad to have spent 1 year at that school. It was a very nice, very modern, very clean, green-looking school. I wish I had more years, over there in that school, because 1 year went by pretty fast. But anyway, that meant that that when I was in elementary school, my 4th grade class would be the very last 4th grade class to graduate out of elementary school in the township's history. So 2004 produced memorable events in sports as well. I was in my 2nd year of being a NASCAR fan, and 2004 marked the first year of Nextel's new deal with NASCAR replacing Winston. So it was the Nextel Cup back in 2004. The opening race, the Daytona 500, was won by Dale Earnhardt Jr., ironically 3 years after his father's death, coming in that same race back in 2001, while Kurt Busch, when he drove for Roush Fenway in the 97 car, he won his first and only championship to date. In the MLB, the World Series, guess who won the World Series? The Boston Red Sox, for the first time in, I think, maybe over 8 decades. I gotta double check on that one, but basically before the Cubs won in 2016, it was the Red Sox who would win like their first championship in such a long time, in like so much time, like going back to the 20s, I think. So imagine what Boston was like celebrating and finally getting a championship for baseball in that city. In the NBA, the Detroit Pistons shocked the world by becoming the World Championships, defeating the LA Lakers, who were trying to go for 4 titles in a row. The loss to the Pistons resulted in a shakeup for the Lakers for that 04-05 season. Phil Jackson wasn't coaching the team, though as all of you know, he would later return 1 season later, and Shaq would leave to join the Miami Heat. And that Christmas 2004 matchup with the Heat, the LA Lakers versus the Heat, highlighting Kobe and Shaq, drew very high ratings. And the Lakers would also miss that playoffs for that season. 2004 also produced the most infamous night in NBA history, with the Pacers and the Pistons brawl, nicknamed the Malice at the Palace, in which Ben Wallace fought with Ron Artest, which resulted in a fan throwing a cup and a full-scale riot involving fans ensuing. The date of that brawl was November 19th, and it also coincided with the release of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which for kids was a huge deal. I mean, think about it, in 2004, I was 10 years old. And so SpongeBob really catered to my generation very well. So, of course, there was a lot of hype for that movie leading up to its release. Now, I never considered myself to be big on SpongeBob, even though I own 2 games in my video game collection. Super Sponge for the Game Boy Advance and Battle for Bikini Bottom for the GameCube. Yeah, so even though I have those 2 games, I wasn't big on SpongeBob. I don't really quote SpongeBob a lot. My brain is just simply a little too crowded with Super Mario. So, speaking more on movies, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was a blockbuster hit, just like all the other Harry Potter movies before and subsequently after. Disney Pixar's The Incredibles, DreamWorks' Shrek 2, The Day After Tomorrow, and Spider-Man 2, all those movies were released in 2004. The Day After Tomorrow, in particular, stirred up a lot of interest regarding global warming and climate change. Whether, no pun intended, whether we'll actually experience something like this is very much up for debate. But let me just ask you this. Do you expect to see 3 super mega snow hurricanes hitting the northern hemisphere in a row and creating another ice age? Also, for 2004, the cinematography, sound quality, and effects were quite modern, and they still hold up pretty well even today. 2004 represented a lot of change. It was the end of a lot of things that were synonymous with the 90s. iPods were beginning to sell plenty and made music much more accessible and convenient. Cell phones started to become more sophisticated so that you could do more than just talk and text, sort of like a beta for what smartphones would become today. Videotapes were being ditched for DVDs. Everyone had a desktop computer with AOL. People were starting to communicate faster via email and also communicating from a little known feature called AIM. Yes, before Facebook there was AIM. But speaking of Facebook, that was actually created in 2004. So one can say that the beginnings of social media came that year in 2004. TV also went through a number of changes. 2 of NBC's biggest shows of the 90s and the early 2000s, Friends and Frasier, ended in May 2004. In fact, we're actually approaching the 16th anniversary of their finales. JAG on CBS and That 70s Show on Fox were beginning their final seasons. Meanwhile, Lost, NCIS, House, Desperate Housewives, those shows would be huge in the 2000s, and they got their start, or were in the middle of their first season in 2004. Television shows for kids like Drake and Josh, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and Unfabulous on Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network's Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Remember those shows? They all got their start in 2004 as well. When I think music of 2004, what comes to mind automatically is Green Day and how huge the album American Idiot was. Punk rock and post-grunge/alternative rock music certainly dominated the early 2000s. The song 1985 by Bowling for Soup, which, believe it or not, was actually a cover version, was a big hit. Avril Lavigne had released an album in 2004. Good Charlotte was still a band that many people listened to. But then there was also a lot of the hip electronic pop music that many people listened to as well. Jessica Simpson, for instance, was popular with young people. Maroon 5 had an album called Songs About Jane, which was a big seller that year. And that album produced hit songs like She Will Be Loved and This Love. The Black Eyed Peas also had a big hit called Let's Get It Started, which I remembered was a song that was played over NBA commercials for ESPN. There's a lot more that I can say about 2004, and I've gone on for over 10 minutes. There's just so much things to talk about and so many things that I reminisce, about that year. But all that you need to know in general is that it was quite a different world back then, even though it looked so modern and tech-driven for its time. Sort of like in a transition phase from, going from the analog stuff to the technological stuff. I mean, just look at TV graphics and logo designs back then. It was very sleek and very futuristic. But we knew at the time that the 90s were long gone, and it was all about looking forward to the future. All of what I have mentioned just now, all those music, all those sports events, TV and movies, they all took place the year that Ken Jennings redefined what it means to be a Jeopardy champion.